Welcome to Suitcase Stories, Boston's Immigrant Unpack 2020. Tonight, you're going to hear from several local storytellers about their experiences as an immigrant in America during 2020 and their hopes for 2021. Some of these experiences may be eye-opening, and some of these experiences, whether you're an immigrant or not, may remind you of your own, those with your family, friends, and neighbors. My name is Yusufi Vali, and I'm the director for the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Advancement here in Boston. I'm an immigrant myself from India and settled in Boston nearly 12 years ago. The Mayor's Office for Immigrant Advancement works to support our immigrant residents. We have a lot of programs and resources, and you can learn more about our office on our website at boston.gov/immigrant. After 4 years of anti-immigrant rhetoric, and particularly a hard last year for so many of our immigrants fighting on the front lines of COVID, it's important to break down barriers and see each other as neighbors. That's what tonight's all about, a space to listen to each other and get to know each other in a real and human way. I'd like to now turn it over to my amazing co-host for the evening and welcome Suitcase Stories director Cheryl Hamilton. Suitcase Stories is a program of the nonprofit, the International Institute of New England, our partner for tonight's event. And Cheryl is the incredible engine behind this great set of programming. Cheryl?
Thank you, Yusufi, so much for having us tonight. And thanks to everybody who's signing on. It's amazing to watch these numbers climb so much. It speaks a lot to the community here in Boston. Yusufi, as he said, I work for the International Institute of New England. We are one of the oldest and largest nonprofits in the region serving new refugee and immigrant communities. We have 5 program areas. We do refugee resettlement, English instruction, employment, legal services, and then this 5th area, which is all about amplifying the voices of refugees and immigrants. And through Suitcase Stories, our goal is to build community, to see the things we have in common, and to unpack or explore, as we like to say, migration through storytelling. So we are so grateful to partner with Moya, particularly in the last year. Your leadership and your support and your outreach to nonprofits like ours in the front lines, but all of the other people involved in this work has been tremendous, and we're very, very grateful. I want to say a few words about how tonight's going to go. We have 6 fabulous storytellers from 6 countries. Usually we'd be on a stage and they'd be backstage anxious. And I will say they are backstage right now. They've recorded their stories in case of tech problems, but we're going to have a live talk back at the end. So if you're interested in staying on at 8:15, you can, and you can ask questions directly to our storytellers because they're excited to answer to you from home. But I also encourage you, because they can't hear the laughter, they can't hear your clapping throughout the night, to open your chat because they're on the chat as well, and send some love. If something resonated with you in a story, if you just want to say congratulations, anything you want, they would love to hear that as well. And it's good for us to connect in that way. So Yusufi, do you want to hand it over?
Yeah, so first of all, just want to again thank all the storytellers and really want to thank all the attendees for joining us tonight. I really hope you enjoyed tonight's event. After the event, we'll post all of their stories on our website at boston.gov/immigrant, and we'll also include language translations of tonight's stories, so we hope you can share it widely with your friends and family. I'd like to now just take a moment to thank Mayor Marty Walsh for supporting this event and making sure immigrants have equitable resources to succeed. The mayor, as many of you know, is a son of immigrants, and since taking office in 2013, he has supported immigrants in Boston and just been an incredible advocate for immigrant rights. I'm sure you've heard the news. Mayor Walsh is President-elect Biden's pick for Labor Secretary. We're really excited for him to go make a bigger impact at the federal level, but obviously sad that Boston is losing him. It's been a privilege to serve as a part of his office, carrying out his vision. And the mayor has made a special recorded message for us tonight.
Good evening, I'm Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our Office of Immigrant Advancement and the International Institute of New England for holding this special Suitcase Stories event. There's something very powerful about storytelling. Growing up, my parents would tell me their experiences, immigrating from Ireland to Boston, and what it was like leaving home and building a community here. That's why this event is so special to me. As the son of immigrants, I know how important it is to keep these stories alive and share them widely. The more we can understand each other's experience, the stronger we'll be as a city. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing their stories with us.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh, and congratulations again. Now, it's time for our storytellers. And I am so excited to introduce you to our first participant. This is a young woman who moved from Iran to Louisiana when she was young, recently graduated from MIT, where she studied brain and cognitive sciences. And without giving away too much of her story, I can tell you that she currently serves as an AmeriCorps member with the New American Integration Program out at Boston Medical Center in their Immigrant and Refugee Health Center. And I think it's worth noting that all of us thank Boston Medical Center and all of the healthcare professionals everywhere who are on the front lines of responding to this crisis and especially supporting refugees and immigrants, just like our storyteller is. So please join me in an enthusiastic virtual welcome to Maida Marzouki.
Applying to colleges in the US as an international student is incredibly hard. It feels even harder if you're not actually international. The thing is, I moved to the US with my mom and little brother from Iran when I was 6, a year and 3 months after my dad had already come here for school. My parents hadn't planned on staying in the US, but as these things go, 12 years and 3 PhDs later, we found ourselves in the same graduate student housing that we started out in at Louisiana State University. My mom started her PhD while my dad was still in school, and then when my dad couldn't find a job during the recession, he went back to school for another PhD. Going to school was their way of keeping us here legally. Double the money didn't hurt either, because a single $13,000 annual stipend for a family of 4 is tight. Part of how I dealt with the anxiety from our situation was by pouring myself into school, because it felt like the only thing I had control over. But when I learned that international students can get denied admission from all but a handful of schools just for needing financial aid to attend, I became even more anxious. Every year my mom would say, "We're so close to getting our green cards. I think this year will work out." But it never did. So here I am my senior year trying to figure it all out. As an Iranian citizen, because of US sanctions on Iran, I can't fill out the one financial aid form online that gets sent to all the schools. I have to reach out to every single school individually to explain my situation and ask them for their paper application. That meant filling out 21 different forms that were all actually exactly the same, except for the name of the school in their heading. Throughout this time, Mr. Borders became my best friend. He was our school senior counselor. We developed a routine of me showing up at his office regularly to whine and complain while he called me out or gave me a pep talk depending on what I needed. One day, I came into Mr. Borders' office more upset than usual, which is saying something. A financial aid officer at one of the schools told me that I couldn't even apply because they didn't give financial aid to international students, which wasn't what their website said. So Mr. Borders called the college to clear up the situation and to politely shame them for being rude to me. "This is my valedictorian we're talking about," he said. And when he got off the phone, he told me, "Who cares about them anyway? You're going to end up at MIT." He was right. 6 months later, I committed to MIT. He knew I'd get in before I believed I could. For a few months, I felt like I finally made it, like all my parents' sacrifices had been worth it. But once I got to MIT, I continued to face barriers. I didn't have work authorization, and traveling was also risky because there was no guarantee I'd be able to come back into the US if I left it. But then my sophomore fall in 2016, when I got into a program to go to Germany for all of January 2017 with MIT funding, I was so excited to go that I was willing to take the risk of leaving the US. But then the presidential elections happened, and I decided last minute not to go. It was the right decision because the travel bans went into effect around the same time I would have been trying to return to the US. Experiences like that were disappointing, but the most stressful thing while I was at MIT was getting closer to turning 21 something most other people my age were really looking forward to. Once I turned 21, I'd no longer be dependent on my parents' status. Even if they got green cards, I'd have to wait for years to get it through them. For me, the prospect of being on my own with my immigration status was terrifying. My dream had always been to become a doctor, but getting into medical school as an international applicant is even harder than getting into undergrad. How was I going to keep myself here legally? Then one day, in January 2018, 5 months before I turned 21, I got a message from my mom on WhatsApp. It was a picture of a notice from U.S. Customs and Immigration Services. Our petition for a green card had been approved. I was going to be okay. The first thing I wanted to do, literally as soon as I found out, was leave the U.S. So I applied to do an internship in Mexico for summer 2018 with MIT funding. Our immigration documents took so long to process, I spent most of the summer in limbo in Boston, unsure if I'd even be able to go. In the end, I was able to make it to the last 5 weeks of my internship. It wasn't the original 12 I'd hoped for, but it was better than nothing. I fell in love and promised I. So now it's February 2020, and I've just recently completed my degree at MIT. I fly to Mexico through the same MIT program to do a 6-month internship this time, hoping to make up for the summer I barely got to stay in Mexico. But it's funny, because yet again, I only get to stay in Mexico for 5 weeks. When we first found out we'd have to come back to the US because of coronavirus, I was in denial. I didn't want to come back. As an alum, I was running out of time to take advantage of these kinds of MIT programs, and I wanted so badly to make up for everything I felt like I'd missed out on for most of my time at MIT, and to experience things that would help me grow into the kind of doctor I wanted to be. For me, spending so much time in Mexico in 2020 was a key part of that. My parents had always emphasized community and serving others, and having grown up both low income and an immigrant, I was naturally drawn to working with similar communities. I'd taken Spanish classes while I was at MIT, but I wanted to become fluent in Spanish in the real world so that I could strengthen my connection with other immigrants in the US. So it was really disappointing to have to come back. But the funny thing is, it wasn't as upsetting as when I didn't get to go to Germany, or as frustrating as when I almost didn't get to go to Mexico the first time. This time, there was also a hint of relief. I was used to anxiety and disappointment over things outside of my control. Even if I still wasn't amazing at handling it. But for once, it felt like most other people were also going through the same thing. It was lovely to watch MIT admin and alumni come together to provide resources for MIT students who didn't have plans for the summer. But I wish I'd had access to those resources, to those remote opportunities, when I struggled to find free housing every summer to support myself since I could only do unpaid internships because of my immigration status. So in summer 2020, when I found out about my current position through AmeriCorps with the new American Integration Program, it felt meant to be. The position I was interested in would be at Boston Medical Center. So not only would I get to serve immigrants, but I get to do it in a healthcare setting. In this role, I connect patients to resources to help them navigate the immigration system. And on top of that, it'd be a BMC, a safety net hospital that serves a very diverse population. So now it's September 2020, and I've just recently started working remotely, even though I live a 20-minute walk from BMC. I can't see patients in person while they're at the hospital, so I have to reach out to almost everyone over the phone. And for me, talking on the phone doesn't come easy. Maybe it's because of all the years of uncomfortable phone conversations with relatives in Iran where I didn't know what to say because I hadn't seen them in so long. Or maybe it's because I'm so used to texting where we can make up for not being there with emojis and ample time to think about what we want to say. But over the phone, there are moments when words aren't enough for everything people are going through. And all I want is to be physically there with them, to let them know that even if they feel temporarily stuck, they're not alone. So every morning before I start reaching out to patients, I have to sort through these anxieties in my own baggage. I almost never know how a call will go, but I know there isn't a day that'll go by where I won't feel helpless at some point, where I won't hear pieces of my parents' struggle or the uncertainty that was so familiar to me in our patients' voices. Sometimes our patients can't access the support they need because of their immigration status. Some of our patients can't socially distance because they're experiencing homelessness and have to stay in shelters. Others don't have work authorization yet, so they're not working and making money to afford a lawyer. But the waiting list of pro bono organizations is too long. And the pandemic has only lowered the capacity of these organizations even more. One patient tells me he looks forward to my calls because he's usually alone with his thoughts. Because of his current health issues, he spends most of his time quarantined in his room, thinking about his family back home and the trauma he experienced before he escaped his country. He says our weekly check-ins give him relief. He just needs someone to talk to. Then there's the patient who wonders if she should go to college. She's filed for asylum in the US, but it hasn't been approved yet. She's worried about being deported while she's still trying to finish school. So is it even worth it to start? And I think about how Mr. Border didn't have all the answers. He couldn't change my immigration status to help me with college, but he could validate how unfair it all was. He was there to remind me to not lose hope and to keep pushing forward. So even though I'm limited by things outside of my control, I still have the opportunity to build relationships with the patients I get to work with. And it's easy to downplay the power of just being there for someone. But after having spent so much of 2020 being forced apart, I think we've all come to appreciate just how much we need the simple things. Just how much we need to connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Maida. I appreciate what you said about connection during this time. It's one of the reasons we're here tonight. I'd also like to thank BMC and NAIP for everything you do to support immigrants and refugees in our communities. I'm very excited to introduce our next storyteller. This is someone I know very well because he's actually a member of my team. Luigi Lelan is Moya's Community Engagement Coordinator and originally from Haiti. He joined us in January of 2020. So Luigi, congrats on your 1-year anniversary with the city. Luigi's job is to connect our office with nonprofits and residents, and he's the best person for this job because he speaks 6 languages. But even more importantly, he has so much heart and passion for people. I have so much admiration for him professionally and personally. So if you don't know Luigi, get to know him, and you should reach out to Moya to get connected with him. Luigi, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Sunday is truly my rest day. On Saturdays, I wake up, I cook, I clean, I do some shopping, and I prep the following week. So on the first Sunday in December 2020, I decide to kick back and do something that I haven't done in a while. I decide to catch up on a show, Teen Wolf, that I stopped watching 3 years ago. I decided to do a Teen Wolf binge-a-thon. On one episode, Scott, the main character, the werewolf, is talking to his best friend Styles, the human. And he's expressing how worried he is about their upcoming senior year. And Style tells him that he doesn't really understand where he's coming from. So Scott says, "Do you know what regression to the mean is?" And simply put, it's the concept that things cannot be all good or all bad in life. And they have had a few good months considering that no one has tried to kill them. So eventually, on the scale of think good and bad, things would have to tip one way or the other. They were either going to be really good or really bad. So as the episode goes on, I start to think about 2020, and although most people have had an awful year, mine did not start that way. It started with a set of positive transitions. So it's January 2020, and I'm getting ready to celebrate my birthday on the 11th with Rudolph, my cousin, whose birthday is 2 days after mine. And coincidentally, I would start a job on that day as well at the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Advancement as their new community engagement coordinator. And that job was particularly magical to me because I fell in love with it through the application process. I spoke with Agnes Cheng, our chief of staff, and originally from Hong Kong, and I was just sold on it. The first 2 months at Moya, where I work, are amazing. I learn about the different scope of work of different departments, and I learn on how to best advocate for immigrants. And I work with a group of passionate folks. So I'm inspired and I'm doing well. Things cannot get any better. And things are great in my personal life as well. One cousin announced that his daughter was born that same month. And another announces that he's expecting a baby, my cousin Chris. So things are great. And March gets even better when I think we're like 1 week working remotely. It's 7:30 that morning. I wake up, I twist and turn in bed, and I try not to pick up my phone, but it buzzes, and of course I go for it. Rudolph sends a video to our family group chat of about 30 of us. And it's a slideshow of the great things that happened the year before in 2019. It highlights the newest members of our family. And it continues on with a scene where Rudolph is reading a sonogram. And his wife asks him, what does he see? What letters does he see? And he goes, A and B. And of course, I already know what that means. So I'm jumping in excitement and while Rudolph is still figuring it out. And his wife says, twins, Rudolph, twins. And so this is just the best news that I had received in a really long time. Better yet, even more great news come when Rudolph calls me personally and asks me to be godfather to one of the twins. And I look up to him so much, so of course I accept and I'm excited. March was great. Then April comes. I receive a message one morning that reads, our uncle passed away this morning. As sudden as that was, I sat there in shock, kind of thinking that maybe this is a dream that I need to wake up from, but I call my cousin Bradley, Rudolph's younger brother, and he confirms everything. Things took a turn for the worse for that uncle, and he passed away alone in the ICU over the weekend. And not to say the least, we're shocked. The second week of April comes and, we're mourning the loss of this one uncle. And Rudolph calls me and tells me that his grandmother, my great aunt, just found out that her son passed away. And, he also says that his mom contracted COVID. And so they're worried because his grandparents live at home with his mom. All of this happening in Brockton. And 2 days later, we get a call to know that, our great uncle actually went to the hospital, and the following day he passed away. Another relative had called me to let me know that it was just the saddest scene to see Rudolph's grandmother saying goodbye to her husband. And she was saying all the way through that she couldn't believe that this was happening, that she knows this is the last time that she's going to see him. And all I could hear is her yelling no, and that just echoes with me. So now we're in the third week of April, and we're planning for 2 funerals, and I call my dad, and I'm encouraging him to follow protocol for COVID precautions to stay safe. And he mentions that his brother, who was visiting from Haiti, had returned to the hospital because he was originally visiting because he had a health concern. And in the moment, I cannot get myself to think that he has COVID. And so I tell my dad, stay positive. I'm sure he'll be fine. And, at least he's not in the hospital for COVID. But I was wrong. He was in the hospital for COVID. And only 2 days later, I get another message that says, our uncle passed away this morning. Again, I'm in shock. I drop my phone. I get this wave of anger, sadness, and anxiety. And I just can't understand what is going on. And I take a few days off, hopefully, to start getting myself together. And my colleagues are very supportive. The Moya team even helps me gather some funds to help pay for the funerals. And Mayor Marty Walsh gives me a personal call. I call my dad, and he's inconsolable, and he tells me, "Please stay safe, my son. I cannot take another hit." I mean, I couldn't take another hit either. I mean, I totally understood where he was coming from. But another hit came when just a week later, my mom announced that her aunt also passed away. So 4 weeks in a row, we lost 4 people, and due to COVID, and it's just horrible. So May comes, and as Teen Wolf had predicted, things have taken a turn for the worse. Things were not just not good; they were really bad. So I decided to look for some positive things and be a beacon of hope, not only within myself, but also for my family. And I call them every day. And what started making things easier is that one cousin actually announced that she was pregnant as well. So we start having some more positive things to talk about. And the 30 of us kind of decide to, in the family group chat, to put together a Zoom call where we all gather, and to my surprise, everyone was just playing games. I mean, I was glad to see that it was actually easier than I thought to keep ourselves going. We even started playing a game where we would tell each other, "Hey, get this particular item from your house." And it was so much fun to see how competitive the family got. And not to pat myself on the back, but I did win that little, a little competition that we had in the family. It was satisfying. But yeah, so June comes around, and it's time to do the gender reveal celebration again, staying positive and really keeping ourselves going. Rudolph announces that he's having twin boys, obviously with the blue smoke that was revealed, that showed that reveal in the little gathering that he had at his house. Most of us attended via Zoom. And another cousin who had announced that he was pregnant as well, that he was expecting with his wife, my cousin Chris, announced that he was expecting a boy as well. A cruiser had stopped in front of the house and blurted blue lights, and that's how he found out that he was having a boy. And finally, my other cousin who announced that she was pregnant in May announced that she was having a girl. So 2020 has been quite eventful, to say the least. And with it, there's one thought that keeps coming to mind, and that is 4 for 4. We lost 3 uncles and 1 aunt, and saw the birth of 3 nephews and 1 niece. And while we each mourn these losses in different ways, I think the birth of these babies has pushed all of us to appreciate the way that the skill is tipping, or has tipped, back into a positive direction. So what a year, right? And what a concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Luigi. Everyone at Moya is so sorry for your losses, but we are also celebrating the new additions to your family. You're going to be the best uncle, and your family is lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you. Our next storyteller is someone who keeps City Hall running. If you've ever been to City Hall, there's a coffee stand in the building, and it makes really good coffee. It's called Recreo Coffee Shop, and it's owned by Miriam Morales and her husband, Hector. They also have another location in West Roxbury. Miriam moved to the U.S. as a young woman from Nicaragua, and she is one of many immigrant business owners vital to Boston's economy. This has been a really hard time for small businesses, and Miriam, I'm honored to have you share your journey with us.
My story as an immigrant starts in 1983 when my parents in Nicaragua reach out and say, "Pack your bags, you are leaving tomorrow." I'm 13 years old at the time, and my country has a war, so I'm being sent to live with my aunt in Florida. I am scared of not seeing my parents again, even pressure to learn a new language, to be a teenager in a new school. But my new life continues, and I meet an amazing man named Hector, and we get married at our church in Boston. We have so much in common. Our love for God, our love for people, and our desire to help others around us. And 20 years later, we decide to open our coffee business in our 50s. We are excited but scared at the same time because we have no business background. I am an industrial engineer. He's a scientist. But the adventure starts, and we open our first coffee shop in 2015 in West Roxbury on a Valentine's Day. There's a blizzard warning. And that opening day is a milestone for us. We see 400 customers come through our door. And it's exciting. And we see our shop grow to become a place in our community for people to come and relax, gather, even give back. As we start seeing new friends, as we serve coffee to them, we start seeing a community that wants to support us. One of our customers even says that Recreo Coffee feels to her like the living room of West Roxbury. That was exciting. For us, one day we meet with the manager of Eastern Bank, Stephanie, and she says to us that the city of Boston is remodeling the lobby of the Boston City Hall in downtown, and that they're wanting a coffee shop at their location. And she says they're putting out a bid, and we didn't even know what that meant. What is a bid? And wait, even other companies that are well known were our competitors, and we are here a small local business, and we're in front of 9 people in a panel at City Hall doing a presentation about our business. There is tons of paperwork, but we go for it. We put out the bid, and months later we receive an email from City Hall, and Suzanne from property management writes, "Congratulations." And we get it. Can't believe it. But we're so excited. We start hugging and screaming in our home office. And here we are starting a new adventure. We want to really build in City Hall a place of friendship, of love, of community, like we had in West Roxbury. And we start seeing new people. As we serving coffee, we start meeting the workers of City Hall. And in June 5th, 1 year later, at our year anniversary, we are celebrating with 50 people in the lobby of the City Hall, our first anniversary. And we see the support of the people that work in that building. And my husband and I feel at that moment, wow, the dream came true. But then 2020 comes along and things start to change. And we were in our office and we receive another email from City Hall. But this time they're saying the building is closing because of COVID-19. And we're like, what does that mean? Is it everybody that's going remote or just some? What about the people that really depend on it? And for me, it was really stressful even to think about what is that? And we feel like, is this even real at the moment? And the day when we saw our transactions go from 250 to 20 a day, it was real. And we were struggling with the decision of should we close or should we stay open? And we decided to stay open because we felt that after 4 years in that building, the people have become family. You know, the custodians, the people at the mayor's office, the security guards, they're all there wanting to for us to be available. They wanting their morning coffee. So we decide we should stay open. Even if it's just 6 feet away, we need to be open. This is a hard decision because we don't know at this point, are we even going to be surviving as a business with 20 transactions a day? But we know that there are people depending on us back home, my own family. Now we go back to West Roxbury and things are starting to change also. Our sales are dropping. We have to close the indoor seating. And that was hard for me because I love greeting people. I love to hug them. And now only 3 people at a time come in. It was different. It felt so different. And it reminded me of the time that I came from my country to the US, adjusting to something new. Going home after a day of work, that was another challenge, a scary moment for me and my husband. The fear of bringing the virus to home to our kids who are asthmatic. But we didn't close. We really wanted to be available to a community that for years have been supporting us. And we stay open. You know, even one of our baristas has to stay home because of a situation in her family. We know that our other baristas need a job. So we know that staying open is a good decision. But now the weather's changing. People are starting to come out. And it's so good for us to see some of our regulars that we haven't seen in so long. Like Paul and Graham and Richard and Mara. To see them again and know that they're okay. And also even seeing other customers coming in just because they wanted to give to Recreo. One of our customers that comes every Monday, and he asked for a large cup of coffee for $3. And he leaves a $20 bill just with the desire to help our staff stay afloat. Those are the kinds of heart I see every day. Now, we don't see some people that used to come to get their coffee. And we know, my husband and I, we know that it's because of the pandemic. They're vulnerable. And we decide if they're not coming to us for coffee, we're bringing the coffee to them. And now you see us in our van filling them up with bags of coffee. We put specials to have free deliveries, and so people take advantage of that. And we go in our van to West Roxbury, to Rossendale, to Jamaica Plain, and we do home deliveries together. We are dropping off a coffee bag in a porch of one of the couples that we don't see since March. They're Dory and her husband. And as we go into our car to drive away, we see them in their front door waving and yelling, "Thank you." And we know at that moment that it was worth it. And that it's so happy to see that and to know that there's in the future, there's a time that's coming that we can all sit and enjoy a cup of coffee in our cafe.
Thank you, Miriam, for that incredible story and for all that you and Hector and the staff do to create community in West Roxbury and at City Hall. And I have to say, it was fun working with you and learning that I can order my coffee online from Recreo, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. Our next storyteller is another incredible woman like Miriam. She is the executive director of the Brazilian Workers Center, one of the many nonprofit organizations here in Greater Boston serving some of the most vulnerable families during this incredibly challenging time. She is a leading immigrant advocate here in Massachusetts, and I dare say the country, a role model to so many. And it was impressive to me that on top of all that she is juggling to support families during this crisis, she carved out a little bit of time to share her story with you. So with deep gratitude, I'd like to introduce Natalicia Tracy.
It's another day full of Zoom meetings. It's the afternoon and I am in my kitchen looking into my computer screen, involved in meeting after meeting. In addition to being the executive director of the Brazilian Workers Center in Boston, I'm also the co-chair of Driving Families Forward Coalition. We are discussing the driver's license legislation we are trying to get passed. I'm also keeping one eye on my tea kettle so you won't whistle loudly, and another eye on my phone. Multitasking as always. It's a lively meeting on Zoom, and we are right in the middle of discussing our strategy for moving our bill forward. When it passes, over 100,000 working families will be able to obtain a driver's license in the state of Massachusetts. It won't matter whatever the immigration status is. Well, my tea kettle water is about to boil, and from the corner of my eye, I can see that a text message just appeared on my phone. It is from my sister who has COVID. It reads like a goodbye message though. Thank you for taking me to Nevada and Arizona in February. For a second, everything else fades into the background and I lose sight of what I'm doing and where I am. My mind rushes back to Nevada where my sister and I traveled 2 months before to the National Domestic Workers Alliance Congress. It was a congress with a tight agenda, workshops, panels from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. It had important discussions about the State and National Domestic Workers Alliance Bill of Rights designed to bring respect, fair wages to all workers. Though the conference was exciting and important, my sister and I also wanted to see the city and we escaped every minute that we had free. You should know something about my sister and I. We grew up in Brazil. We laugh at everything, whether good or bad, but especially in stressful situations. We share a weird sense of humor. I guess we learned to do that because my mother had 10 of us and that kept her very busy with the domestic chores. In Nevada, my sister and I made a visit to the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. We played loud music on a car stereo, we sang along, we stopped to take in the beautiful scenic views. We even got lost. At one point, without a phone signal, it was so scary. But looking back now, it was not as scary as the last few months. You see, my sister has been very sick since April, only 2 months after we returned. We both work at the Brazilian Workers Center, helping thousands of immigrant families with emergency food and rent. In April, a community member called us and told us she had COVID. That same person had just been sitting in front of me in my office 2 days before. Hearing that, all of us panicked and we went to get tested. All of our tests came back. Most of us were negative except for my sisters. She initially had some headaches, but then she progressively got sicker. She has been sick for a few weeks now. Looking at the text message again, my mind starts rushing and thinking, why is my sister talking like that? Usually she sends me messages, text messages with cute memes and messages from families, reminding me of meetings. She doesn't send messages like this, goodbye messages. She, so she can't, so I started to panic. My sister can't die. That's crazy. That's not fair. She has a son. He's only 10 years old. Who's gonna care for him? He needs his mother. We have so many trips planned. We have a huge list. We just started. I'm really concerned. I'm even panicking. But then I realized that I'm still in the Zoom meeting and I can't let them see me cry. So I tell myself that I can't be thinking so negative. I'm very good at doing that, you know. I learned how to do that for survival when I was trapped 2 years as a worker in domestic slavery, away from everything that I knew and cared about. I tried my best to stay engaged to the end of the meeting. I turned off the stove and the meeting was over. Then I called a few people in our families to tell them what was going on. I even called her ex-husband. I don't know why, I just did. Then I went to the store, I bought her a few things, and then I rushed to her house. Inside, she was lying in bed, and I stayed 6 feet away from her. I had 2 masks on and gloves. I was worried about catching and carrying the virus away with me. My sister could barely speak and breathe. It was really upsetting to see her like that. She had pneumonia. I told her, this is crazy. You have to eat. You have to drink water. You have to try. You have to get better. We have a lot of travel to do still. I left my sister's house feeling really bad because we always count on each other and we always have each other's back. I was telling myself that she has to get better. She has to be okay. I know she's strong. Well, 2020 has been a challenging year for sure. It has tested our resilience and our faith. So many had to struggle to hold on to our jobs. Many of us had to risk our health as frontline workers trying to help those in worse trouble. Parents had to help their children with Zoom schooling like never before. At our food pantry, we saw so many families hungry and unable to pay the rent. Also, as immigrants, we endure a different kind of racism for people assuming that we are walking COVID-19 plagues. It has been incredibly stressful for my colleagues, our community, and families everywhere. We've been on the trenches. For me, though, there has been one bright light. On June 9th, after being sick for a few months, my sister finally was able to get back to work and to us. Thank God she survived COVID. And we're already planning a trip to Niagara Falls for this summer.
Thank you, Natalicia, for your leadership and for the critical work of the Brazilian Workers Center, especially during this past year. BWC is one of many nonprofits who have been working tirelessly, so I'd like to thank all of our community partners for everything you do for our immigrant communities. Up next is a man of many talents. He was born in Senegal and has since lived in several countries and worked in many different industries, including travel, academia, research, and aviation. Without a doubt, he has a lot to share. I know Dovi Abbey because he is part of our First Class for Immigrants Lead Boston. That's the city's new program that helps train emerging immigrant leaders to become advocates for their communities. You can learn more about that program on our website, boston.gov/immigrants, and even consider applying for our fall course. Dovi, thank you for sharing tonight. I know we're going to hear more from you because you are going to continue to do great things for us in Boston.
"2020 has been a year for the ages, for all of us. For me, it has also been defined by 2 phone calls I had with a very good friend of mine called Luton, and who is also my preferred ping pong practice partner. So he called me up on the first Monday of 2020 to ask whether I was going to practice on the next day, a Tuesday. My answer to that question is always yes. What else do we do on Tuesday night from 6 to 10 p.m.? On this particular occasion, though, he had a concern. Dovi, have you heard about that virus circulating from Asia to now Washington State and California? Yes, I said, but what does that have to do with ping pong practice in Boston, so far away? His words still resonate with me today. Well, remember, your health is more important than ping pong practice. Let's wait a few weeks and see what happens. You see, ping pong practice for me and for him and for many of us is an integral part of our life. Every Tuesday night from 4 p.m., from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., that's what we focus on. Nothing else registers or matters. We play ping pong, our bodies relax, our mind clear up, declutter, I call it. Indeed, full mind and body detox. And frankly, I don't really remember my life without ping pong. Everywhere I live, I play ping pong. And so in San Francisco, as an example, I play ping pong with a lot of different people, Malaysians, South Koreans, Japanese immigrants. It's a way for me to forge relationships around that table. Away from my home country of Senegal, I've met a lot of different and interesting people. So that's what I call personal ping pong diplomacy. Here in Boston, we also have an amazing group of badminton and ping pong players. They come from very different countries. They are from very different professional backgrounds. One of the guests in the gym who really often or frequently chats with us is a police officer. So see, for us, ping pong practice is about camaraderie. We come from different horizons, we come from different perspectives, but we're still, between games, we're still able to chat and talk about numerous topics, from current news to anything else that comes uh, to mind. We can have conversations. Our opinions may differ, from US politics to French bakery. Whatever our views, we still keep it civil and respectful. So this is the backdrop against which my friend calls me the second time. And this time around, he wanted to talk about a topic that touches upon race relations. So he asked me if I've been following the news recently, and in particular, if I've followed the news and heard about this black guy who was killed. And so, of course, I asked, what do you mean, the black man who was killed by police in Minneapolis? Are you talking about George Floyd? He said, yes, that's right. I'm talking about this guy because it seems like he's done something wrong. My immediate reaction was, wait a second. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, he was killed because he was accused of committing a $20 fraud. Well, let me say this clearly. To me, nobody should die for $20. And the thought that you could lose your life for $20 is really foreign to me. And so, as I said that, my friend insisted, listen, we don't know everything about this story yet. So let's wait and see what happens. See, this reaction puzzles me a bit because it's not the first time. My friend is a very decent man of Asian descent, a former US soldier stationed overseas, and a retired high school teacher. As such, he offers unique insights and perspectives on many facets of life, and I value those perspectives. But he always seems to think that Black people are guilty as charged. And in this particular instance, his stance is troubling to me. So as I sat down in front of my computer that evening, I couldn't help but wonder, why are so many Black people killed by police or by some self-styled vigilantes? Even for $20, I can understand it. Michael Milken, Bernie Madoff, who stole billions of dollars, were not killed, and rightfully so. They were sentenced to jail. That's the right punishment. Later that week, I went to Nubian Square, initially for grocery shopping. When I got there, I saw a group gathering for a protest. So I get closer to listen to the speeches. I do need to listen to learn more about these issues. Because for me, listening is the best way to learn more about the somber history and this relationship between the Black community and police. I certainly don't know enough about the history. And as I listen, something becomes abundantly clear, which is that war and conflicts can be solved by talking among protagonists to this conflict in order to bring real change, real solutions. We need to keep those dialogue, this open exchange of views going, because we need to get to a point where Black lives will matter, where Black lives will be saved as a matter of right, because that is the only option. Not saving Black lives as a message is unbearable. And it's also unacceptable. So the only message that can be sent out is that Black lives do matter. Now, as 2021 dawns on us, I firmly hope that we can get back to some sense of normalcy soon. No guarantee here, but hopefully soon, because I'd like to see my friends again. I'd like to get back to ping pong practice. I know it sounds trivial, but for us, it's an integral part of our life. It's where we can get back to our friends, where we can laugh again with them, where we can disagree with them. It's fine. But we'll remain civil, we'll remain respectful. We'll live again with them. We'll laugh again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dovi, for that incredibly important story and reminding us of an incredibly important message that we can't say enough. Black lives matter. Also, Dovi, I really hope that you and your friends get to play ping pong soon. I know how important it is, all of us do, that finding something that brings you joy and helps you de-stress during this time is incredibly important. And selfishly for me, it's storytelling, actually. In fact, it's through storytelling that I met our last storyteller, Chris Concepcion. Chris and I met at a storytelling event here in Greater Boston. I didn't know at the time that he has a deep interest in politics like I do. Chris currently serves as a director of engineering with the Democratic National Committee, where he and his team manage a platform called iwillvote.com that many of us have heard about and probably used. Chris was born in the Philippines, spent much of his life in Canada, but has lived in Greater Boston for more than 2 decades. And I'm so excited for you to hear what 2020 meant to him. Chris Concepcion.
So February 2020, I get a letter from immigration asking me to come in for my citizenship interview. And I'm excited, but also a little anxious, because I've been living in the country for 24 years now. I came here from Canada. Before that, I was living in the Philippines. And throughout this entire time, I've been wanting to become a citizen. And now I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being able to vote. I'm looking forward to jury duty. I'm looking forward to just being done with all of this, because, you know, it's been a long time. And even though I didn't have a voice at the ballot box, I wasn't going to stay silent. I've been getting involved with protests for the Iraq War. You know, I had ideas about who I want to be my mayor, to be president, what should be done with my taxes. I would volunteer to phone bank for transgender protections. And then in this past year, I still wanted to make a difference. And I wound up getting a job as a director of engineering, leading teams working on websites like iwillvote.com, which help people across the country find out how to register to vote, where to vote, and ensure that everyone's vote counts. And February 2020, which is when I was supposed to be doing my immigration interview, was also the time of the Iowa caucus. And I Will Vote was going to be the main site where Iowans were going to find out about their caucus locations. And so at this time, my team and I, we are busy working to get all of the polling locations loaded. And these are places that range from big churches in cities like Des Moines to small venue halls in farm towns across the entire state. And there are sometimes county fairground offices, sometimes classrooms, sometimes not even on Google Maps. We have to get all this data in. We have to match them to the right precinct. We have to make sure that we have good mapping tools so that any Iowan's residential address can be matched to that same precinct. It's hard, detailed, unglamorous work. And while we're doing that, we're also preparing for cyber attacks, for the interference of anybody who wants to disrupt the process and discourage people from participating. You know, we're doing 8 to 12-hour days, weekends. By the end, you know, we do our job, and the Iowa caucus happens. Iowans are able to use our site to find out how to participate in the caucus. But then another team is responsible for the software to tally those caucus results, and their software fails. And I feel for them because, election technology, it's hard. Your software has to be perfect, and it has to be perfect on a specific day. If we have bugs, we can't ask for a do-over. We can't ask to move the election. My boss likes to say our ship dates are written to the Constitution. And I feel for them. And I'm in immigration the following day, and I'm looking up at this CNN news segment, and it's all about nobody knows who won in Iowa, uncertainty, chaos, and people are wondering, like, is this what the rest of the election is going to be like? And I remember going in for my interview, and the immigration officer asks me, like, what do you do? And I say, I work in election and voting technology. She looks at me and looks up at the TV, and it says, you've probably got a busy day. I'm probably not going to keep you too long. I appreciate that, but also, even though my stuff worked, like, the thing you have to always understand is with something this public, like, it's not your job or my job. It's our group responsibility to ensure that stuff works because so many people are relying on it. So the rest of that interview goes well. And then a few days later, I get another letter from immigration saying that, congratulations, you've been approved to become a citizen. Your last step is you need to take the oath of naturalization. And that will be on the 27th of February. And this is the thing I've been waiting for so long. And I'm just really excited. But also, the 27th of February is the last Thursday before Super Tuesday, which is the biggest primary event before the general election. Iowa was stressful, but Iowa was one state. Super Tuesday has 13, including Massachusetts, and including huge states like California and Texas. My team and I, we are still doing 8 to 12-hour days. We're still doing weekends to get the site ready for that. And now I have this choice, right? I could take a day off and go in and swear my oath of naturalization. And I could vote in the Massachusetts primary for the first time. Or I could take the day, I could ask to reschedule and forego that, but take that time to actually help my citizens vote. And, with the debacle in Iowa is still fresh in my memory, that seems to be the only right choice. So I write to immigration and I ask for a reschedule, and immigration grants it. They say your ceremony has now been rescheduled to the 18th of March. And that seems fine. What could go wrong? Well, the 27th, which was when I was supposed to have my naturalization ceremony originally, the day after that is the Biogen Super Spreader Convention. And on the 2nd of March is the first confirmed case of COVID in the Commonwealth. And in the midst of this, I'm getting letters from immigration. Originally my venue was going to be at Faneuil Hall. There was going to be a big ceremony talking about the history of America and the role immigrants played in it. I could have brought all these friends and family in to help see me through this. But then they're saying, okay, we're going to strip down the ceremony to its barest essentials. It's only going to be the oath. You can only bring one person with you. And then by the end of the week, that first week of March, there are 13 confirmed cases in Massachusetts. And I get another message from immigration saying that we're moving this from Faneuil Hall to a conference room in Government Center, and there'll be no guests. My wife, who's been with me for the last 6 years through this process, she can't come. And then on the 15th of March, Governor Baker closes the restaurants and closes the schools and issues a stay-at-home order. And I get a letter from immigration saying that my ceremony has been postponed indefinitely. And I realize that this past year, I've been lucky. My wife and I, we still have our jobs. All of the people I care for, they've managed to stay healthy. But that word, indefinitely, that stung. Because so much of the immigration experience in this country has been about dealing with moving goalposts. There's always another test to take, another visa you have to renew, another line you have to get into. And I'm just so tired of having to deal with these obstacles. And I remember when I found out about that, one of my coworkers said to me, Chris, don't worry about it, if it helps, Massachusetts doesn't have same-day registration. You would have had to register to vote on 12th of February in order to vote in the primary. So you didn't miss on anything. Dude, I know what you're trying to do, but it's not helping because the thing I want to be is a citizen. I don't have that yet. my coworkers, they help me think through this and also recognize that we still have work to do. Like that week of March 15th, when I was supposed to be getting ready to do my naturalization, is also the week of the Florida primary. And Florida is losing polling locations left and right because their volunteers are pulling out because of the public health crisis. And we are keeping up with those changes at the last minute. Other states are moving to mail-in voting, and we are making that move with them. We are changing the site to show more information about how to vote by mail, how to look up a drop box. And we keep up with that because the democracy still has to work during a pandemic, especially during a pandemic. And as the months go by, my brain goes into that, and I get a new letter in June from immigration saying that we are now able to reschedule, and your ceremony will be on June 12th. It'll still be the same thing. It has to be in conference room government center. I can't bring any guests. And so there I am, 7 other immigrants, all getting ready to make this step. And our oath is going to be administered by an Army veteran who came from here from Nigeria. And she looks at us and says that, I know that many of you wanted others here. None of us makes this journey alone. But I made this journey too. Even if I'm a stranger, I can at least be your witness here. And I appreciated that, to be seen in that way. And so, in June, I took my oath, and I became a citizen. And I went home and celebrated with my wife with some fancy takeout sandwiches and a glass of Madeira to toast like the Founding Fathers did. And I went back to work. And in September, I voted for the first time in the state primary. And then early voting started. And I could remember just the amount of traffic that we got. It was more per day than in the entire November 2018 midterms, more than all of the primaries combined. Like state websites were buckling underneath that traffic, and we were picking up that slack. And I was really proud to see that Joe Biden and Steve Bannon told their voters to come to our site because it was just that reliable, that our information was that up to date and that good. And then I also voted in November. And after 24 years, I got to become a citizen and enjoy that. But I also learned in this past year that voting is more than, citizenship is more than just voting. Citizenship is about service, sacrifice, about giving your best to help your neighbors. And I also learned that indefinitely is not forever.
Thank you so much, Chris. What a great way to end our program. Congratulations on becoming a citizen. And thank you so much for protecting our ability to vote, our right to vote. And I just have to say that I think every guy, as we were looking at your tie, was wondering, when are you going to teach us how to tie that tie? I'm now going to pass it back to Cheryl as our storytellers begin to join us.
It is true. There's a lot of comments happening about the tie. It's a beautiful one. I want to thank the storytellers again. Obviously, I have the privilege of working with them, so I get to do that a lot, but there's still something special about when they all come together on one evening. I was reflecting this week about how I say to a lot of people, it's easy to tell a story. We do it every day to our friends and family, but there's something challenging about crafting a story, figuring out how to get an entire year into 10 minutes. But one thing that usually helps is the story is usually behind you. You're reflecting on it. But these storytellers had to bravely tell a story when they're still in the story itself. The pandemic has not ended. These challenges have not gone away. That's why organizations that are represented tonight, INE, the Brazilian Workers Center, Moya, all of these partners were still on the front lines trying to help people. Now, this is when we would invite the audience to stand up and cheer, but I'm going to invite our storytellers to all turn on their videos, and I'm going to ask everyone watching to give them a loud love from your couches. I'm going to ask the storytellers, are they there? There we are, from their homes, from the stages of their homes. Congratulations, everybody. You were unbelievable in your sharing, and I loved how you somehow, the 6 of you, captured everything of 2020. I'm going to remind people online that in a moment you can stay on and ask questions of our storytellers, but first I'm going to let Yusufi close out the official time with some remarks.
Well, I just want to say that, yeah, storytelling is just so powerful, and doesn't it just help you see the folks that you worked with, your neighbors, just in a completely different light, and more than any time in our, I think in our polity, if you will, we need storytelling. Thank you everyone for attending and joining us. I hope you found this program inspiring and uplifting as I did. I'm excited 2020 is behind us, and I'm looking forward to great things for our city for this year. As I mentioned before, we'll post these stories on our website at boston.gov/immigrant, and we'll include translations. So please check that out and spread the word and share it with your families and friends. If you'd like to learn more about Moya, reach out anytime. We're on social media at Boss Immigrants. Our email is immigrantadvancement@boston.gov, and our number is 617-635-2980. And I'm really excited to announce we will have another event with Suitcase Stories and Cheryl around June. So be sure to follow us and join us again for that. And I would be remiss not to end at least my portion of this by thanking my team, especially our communications manager, who's just brilliant, Payan Yu, for putting this together. Her parents, I hope, are watching. She's amazing. And I'd like to thank Cheryl, who has been working on this day and night and coached all of our storytellers one-on-one. I'm grateful to you, Cheryl, and IINE for providing the space, and thank you for your partnership. Cheryl?
Thanks. All right, so thank you to Moya for your partnership as well. I feel this is a big love fest. The International Institute of New England is so grateful that you give us a platform to get these stories out there. And if you're someone who's watching that has a suitcase story, which if you know me, I believe everyone does, please reach out to us at ine.org. We're always looking for new and interesting stories to feature. But mostly, thank you for tuning in. There is so much online that we can watch these days, but it means a lot that you're supporting this particular program. All right, that is the end of our official program, but this is the part 2 bonus. I'm going to kick off a question to our storytellers. So you can turn on your audios now, everybody. And if anybody in the audience wants to ask a question, please throw it in the chat. I'll try to get to them. But to our storytellers, let's start with you, Miriam, because you're in my top right. Why did you want to share your story? Why was this important to you?
I think that one of the biggest motivations is that I know that 2020 was difficult as a business owner and as a women business owner. And I just wanted my story, and even if it had hard times and good times, that it's hopeful and that it helps other people know that it's possible to start a business and to be in the midst of everything and come out the other side.
Yeah, great. Luigi, how about you? You had quite a story.
Thank you so much. I think for me, I figured that sharing a story is always good because that's one more experience that goes unlost in a way. I think 2020 has been really hard for a lot of people, and I do meet many people who tell me, thankfully I did not experience any deaths in the family. We are all good, and I think as much as I like to hear these stories and see the positivity in them, I think that is always balanced with the other side of reality, which includes these losses. I was blessed enough to have both, where our family experienced these series of losses, but we also experienced those series of births. So there is a balance that we are forced, or maybe we have the opportunity to achieve, right? So I figured, why not share the story and really let people know that, hey, I mean, there's always a bright light at the end of the journey, and if we're lucky enough, we find it in the middle somewhere.
And also some wisdom in Teen Wolf. Who knew? I did when the COVID first appeared. I think the real reality for me of how it affected immigrants and refugees was that the first 3 people I knew that had COVID were suitcase storytellers. And it just reminded me, like, this is very real and it's affecting all of us. Natalicia, people were frozen by your story, as they said. They couldn't even comment while they were listening. Can you turn your audio on and tell us why you shared your story?
For everyone who knows me knows that I'm tough and I'm always on the move. And I just want to show the human side of just, that we all have. And the fact that a lot of times we are juggling being really tough and being out there for the community, but also that we also, that it's important to humanize, and it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes too, for anyone, right? That's all. And I think it gave me a chance to be in touch with that inner side of myself that most of the time it's hidden and tucked away most of the time, because I have to be strong for my community, that, and for everything else that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the burden so many frontline professionals share, whether in the hospitals or when nonprofits like ours serving people. Yeah, we're all incredibly grateful that your sister is okay, like deeply grateful. All right, Maida, why did you, I know you were asked by some colleagues to share your story. Why did you say yes?
I think I wanted to share the message that although COVID brought a lot of fear and uncertainty for a lot of immigrants, this fear and uncertainty is familiar. And of course, different communities have been hit differently by COVID. I myself am very privileged. I am working remotely. I have my green card. My situation for the most part has stabilized. But the fear and the fear and uncertainty of COVID for many immigrants is very familiar because of all the other things they're constantly experiencing. It's very familiar for a lot of communities that are marginalized. So it was almost like this was just another year of just like challenges that are pretty normalized. And I think that's the message I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the work you do at BMC and everybody in the New American Integration Program. I mean, it's such an important program and people check it out if you haven't known about it. Chris, Saving Democracy. Why did you want to tell a story? And thanks for doing so.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. I mean, to be honest, I did it because you asked, and I really believe in Suitcase stories. I want to support the program, but also, as I think I said, like it was really valuable to, especially in this year, to be thinking about patience, to be thinking about like having faith that things will work out, but also the importance of, in some cases, doing your best for other people and putting your own needs a little bit behind the needs of others, and that, in a good society, in a just society, that will be recognized and your time will come because you've done your own part for your neighbor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm giggling a little bit about the cat. At International Institute, when we had our first staff meeting remotely, people brought cats and babies, and it was a lot of fun. Dovey, tell me why you shared your story.
Okay. Well, initially, I never thought of ping pong as a metaphor for life or anything else for that matter, except for this, distraction sport, which I love, and I call them my people over there. But as we talked about it, I think the wisdom of what those interactions tell, dealing with different communities and going from story to story within the span of an evening, 6 to 10 p.m. every Tuesday night, we essentially go around the world because we talk about everything while we're playing ping pong with people who are from any number of countries. It's amazing. Sometimes we have 20 countries represented on the floor. And so I thought that the underlying posture about how you deal with differences turns out to be a great learning experience, because when you have so many people coming from so many different places, their understanding of the issues of language is not the same. We may be using the same words, but we don't necessarily put the same meanings behind those words. So it has been, and so when we talk, because initially I wasn't looking at all of that way, but the more I talk with you, Cheryl, the more it became obvious that there was more to the story than just practicing ping pong.
And I know people are curious, like, where do you play ping pong? So I know it's the Y down in Boston is it Huntington? Is that right? So I cannot wait to see you there again.
No, in Chinatown.
Chinatown, that's right.
Right.
So we don't have time for a lot more. I mean, that was a really great, but we've been asked multiple times this question in the chat. So I think it's a great one to end on for each of you in the interest of time. And people asked, what did you learn about storytelling and/or about yourself through crafting your story? Because this is a skill. It's a skill, and it's something that I think benefits our society. But who wants to put a hand up and go first? I don't want to call on somebody, but something you learned about storytelling or yourself.
I go.
All right, John, we'll go in reverse.
That as Cheryl is good at convincing you that you have a story to tell that other people might want to hear.
Thank you.
Now, it's harder for you to internalize that and to work on bringing that story out in a way that made it understandable to others and relatable. So those are to me at least, those were the challenges. Packing all of that together and then thinking of how to structure it in a way that would make it interesting for other people.
That's a great besides the part about me, I just want to say that you're right about making it relatable is so important, but actually it's why we encourage storytellers to work with other people on stories, your neighbors, just telling your friends and neighbors. They're going to ask you things. Our stories are so close to us that we need to learn and hear what other people need to hear. Miriam, you raised your hand. What did you learn?
So I actually was a minister with my husband before we opened the business for almost 20 years. So I spoke in public a lot, giving messages and things. But I learned so much. There is such a big difference in storytelling than just giving a message. Mm-hmm. And so bringing in, since I'm 13 and now I'm 53, all those years into 10 minutes, there was a skill that I feel it was to even cut things that I thought it was important, but to put things that are very important to transmit what I wanted to transmit. I definitely learned that skill, and you are so amazing. Also,
people want to hear your story, you guys. People want to hear about you. But thank you. I'm humbled, but I love the scene where you get the email. I love the part when you're like, "What's a bid?" I mean, totally. Maida, what did you learn about yourself or storytelling through this?
I don't remember who said this, but yeah, feeling like your story, like other people will not want to hear it, or it's not like it's so close to you, you don't know if other people want to hear it. And I feel like that, especially because I feel like personally this year for me, I wasn't super impacted by COVID because I worked remotely, because I didn't have anyone in my immediate family that was affected. So just working with you to find the common thread with this year and how to connect it to other years was, just having your story heard by someone else and having someone else help you realize that it's worth sharing, I think. It was really
so interesting to me. We've had over 200 Suitcase storytellers, and I'm going to say 98% are always saying this, like, are they going to care? Do they know? Are they going to be interested? And I think we're all very humble, and believing in you and believing your story is so critical. Natalicia, something you learned? Oh, still muted. There you go.
It's always about emotions, how much you're holding back until you start talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. I'm so glad you included so much emotion in yours, just your delivery. I mean, I on the edge of my seat and I'd heard it. And Chris, any final words on this craft of storytelling? This is not your first time.
No, but I mean, I think for this particular thing, when I was sort of thinking through the story, like as I sort of said, I feel like I was really lucky with this. So like Made, like, everyone in my life has been healthy. I haven't lost anybody, God forbid. But that sort of experience of having to like wait, the disappointment. Like I think we all in this past year have had different things that we have to struggle through, different things we've had to wait for. And, we all are allowed to be like, see that actually was a struggle, that this year has been hard for us, even if we all made it out the other end, and that it is all something worth telling.
Thank you. I wish we had more time to answer a couple extra questions, but I just want to thank everyone who's watching. We tell stories, but it's nice to have someone to listen to them. And we hope that when we release these, you'll share your favorites or all of them with your friends and communities. Because I think, again, these aren't the type of stories we hear enough of, and we should. And really humanizing this crisis is critical. So, Yusufi, you want to take us home with any final thoughts? Although we're at home.
Well, I just changed, but no, thank you very much. Just looking forward to the event in June. This stuff is just so powerful. And just Cheryl, again, thank you. You have to take some compliments because you're awesome at working with everyone. So everyone have a great night and get vaccinated.
Yeah, and thank you again from the International Institute of New England for supporting this. And all right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.